Under the blinding studio lights, silence fell that no one expected. Cardinal Luis Tagle, known worldwide as one of the most humble voices of the Catholic Church. The man who whispered comfort to millions and once offered a simple candy to a nervous Robert Prevost before he became Pope Leo XIV stood frozen, his eyes wide. The host smiled, cameras zoomed in, and then the unthinkable request came. "Cardinal, would you sing for us?" The audience gasped. For a moment, just a heartbeat time itself felt suspended. Here was the same Tagle, whose tender words helped sway the most diverse conclave in history. The same cardinal who had quietly stood beside the first US-born pontiff as he took the name Leo XIV, invoking the great social justice legacy of Leo XIII, and now in a popular television show watched by millions, he was being asked to do something he never planned, something raw, something human to sing, and he did not say no. He looked upward, as shimmering as if seeking divine permission, then nodded gently. What happened next sent chills through every living room. The music began, not some random pop tune, but an adapted version of Imagine. Yes, the same song that once sparked controversy when a clipped version of Cardinal Tagle singing along years ago was twisted online to accuse him of betraying his faith. This time, live raw, unedited, he changed the lyrics, weaving in words of hope, faith, and the name of Jesus Christ himself. The audience erupted in tears and prayer, some falling to their knees. But then, something else happened. Backstage, Vatican observers watching via secure feed caught sight of Pope Leo XIV, smiling softly, whispering to an aide, "This is what I meant by a missionary church. Fearless, even when unexpected." The moment hit social media like wildfire. Hashtags exploded, news outlets scrambled. What was meant as an entertainment gimmick became a spiritual earthquake. People who had walked away from the church said they felt something they hadn't felt in years. Faith returning, hearts softening. Some called it a miracle. Others, a warning sign that the church under Leo XIV and leaders like Tagle were changing, breaking molds, willing to step into a world that had forgotten reverence and sing the truth back into it. And yet, whispers from Vatican insiders began to spread. This wasn't planned. Someone on the production team pushed for it. Someone with influence. A rumor surfaced an influential media owner, known for opposing the church's stance on certain moral issues, had orchestrated this moment to trap Tagle into either refusing on live TV, making him appear cold, or singing and risking ridicule. But instead of humiliation, Tagle transformed the trap into a triumph, and in doing so, set off ripples the world has yet to understand. Even now, days later, videos of that night trend globally. Cardinal Tagle, eyes closed, voice trembling, yet steady, singing of heaven, of hope, of Jesus' mercy. And behind him, the digital backdrop flashed a quote from Pope Leo XIV. "A shepherd must be willing to go where the sheep are even, if the fields are strange, even if the world is watching." And so the question rises, was this just a spontaneous, heartwarming moment on TV or the beginning of something deeper? Something stirring within the church? Something heaven-sent in a time when faith feels fractured? Because that night, when a cardinal was asked to sing, it wasn't just a performance. It was a prophetic act. And for millions watching, it felt like the sound of a church awakening. Again, asterisk. And that's when the world changed. The song was still echoing in the studio air when something strange happened. Lights flickered not from the stage tech but as if the building itself groaned under an unseen weight. People clutched their hearts, tears streaming, whispering prayers they hadn't spoken in years. Someone was present. Cardinal Tagle opened his eyes and froze. Audience swore they saw it. A shimmer of gold behind him, like a figure robed in light. Screenshots would later flood the internet. An image many insisted showed the faint outline of a cross blazing over his shoulders. Some dismissed it as lens flare, others as manipulation. But deep inside, souls trembled. At that same moment, across the ocean, Pope Leo XIV was on his knees in the Apostolic Palace. He'd been reading about the great purification spoken of by mystics, a time when the bride of Christ would be tried like gold in fire, and then his private phone rang. A voice he trusted, a Vatican insider, said only 7 words. "Holy Father, they moved tonight. It has begun." Who were they? Those secret factions inside the church, the ones whispered about for decades. Some loyal to Christ and his teaching, others power-hungry, driven by ideologies foreign to the gospel. At the Pope's heart pounded. Was this performance, this simple, humble act of a cardinal singing, used by heaven to expose something dark? Or had hell itself tried to set a trap and failed spectacularly? Reports began surfacing. An email leak showing a powerful media figure had indeed arranged the singing request to humiliate the church, but that humiliation never came. Instead, millions witnessed an unshakable faith won, cardinal taking, a moment meant for ridicule and transforming it into prophecy. The internet's mockery turned into reverence, and that terrified those who wanted the church silenced. But the story didn't end there. Days later, a mysterious envelope reached the Vatican's Secretariat of State. Inside, letter, "There will be another moment soon, not in a studio, but in the heart of the church itself. Prepare or fall." Analysts called it nonsense. But deep in the archives, theologians whispered, was this connected to the hidden warnings of Fatima? To the third secret not yet fully revealed? And then, out of nowhere, a Vatican security breach, a hidden camera in one of the closed synodal rooms caught men in scarlet and purple vestments, cardinals arguing fiercely. One slammed a document on the table, shouting, "You're leading her to ruin?" Another responded coldly, "The people want change and we will give it to them with or without Rome." When Pope Leo XIV saw the footage, he wept. He knew the bride of Christ, the Catholic Church herself, was being pulled in opposite directions. This wasn't just theology, it was war. A war for souls. And in that war, Tagle's unexpected singing became a sign. For believers, it was a whisper from heaven. Even when they try to trap you, my voice will sing through you. For enemies of the church, it was a warning. Your plans will crumble. The night after that broadcast, strange occurrences swept across Europe. In 3 separate cathedrals, statues of Christ on the cross reportedly shed tears, one of them in Tagle's own home country of the Philippines. Scientists rushed to explain it, calling it condensation or hoax. But pilgrims flocked to pray, saying the tears were real. Rome trembled. Faithful priests reported unusual confessions, people returning after decades, crying out, "I saw it. I felt him calling me back." Yet inside the Vatican, factions were whispering of power shifts, of secret meetings, of names on lists cardinals marked for removal and silencing. And then came the chilling message to Pope Leo XIV. From an anonymous source within the Roman Curia. "Holy Father, they are planning to move against Tagle. He embarrassed them, and they will not forgive." The Pope looked out his window at St. Peter's Basilica and uttered one line, "If they touch him, heaven will respond." The war for the soul of the church had entered a new stage, and it began with a song, asterisk, that night. As Rome slept beneath the ancient shadow of St. Peter's dome, the Holy Father could not rest. Pope Leo XIV stood alone in the papal chapel, clutching a rosary that had belonged to Pope Francis himself. His voice trembled as he prayed, "Lord, your bride is bleeding, your church is wounded, and yet your mercy still calls her home." Suddenly the wind shifted, candle extinguished on its own. And in that silence, a deep voice echoed not from the walls, but from somewhere greater, older, eternal. "The time has come." The Pope froze. In the distance, bells rang unexpectedly, 3 chimes at midnight, a pattern reserved only for papal death announcements. Yet no one had died. The Vatican guards checked every clock, each one functioning normally. But those 3 bells, they were real, heard by witnesses across the city. Some fell to their knees, convinced it was a heavenly warning. The next morning, A sealed packet arrived at the Apostolic Palace, delivered by hand. No signature, no trace. Inside were copies of ancient prophecies hidden in the Vatican archives for centuries. They spoke of a singing shepherd, a man who would lift his voice at an unexpected time before a world audience, and trigger a chain of events that would lead to the purification of the bride of Christ. The papal secretary whispered, "Holy Father, it's Cardinal Tagle. The prophecy is pointing to him." But even as heavens seemed to move, darkness responded. Reports reached the Pope of secret midnight meetings, where a small but powerful group of prelates plotted to undermine his authority. One message intercepted by Vatican intelligence simply read, "Tagle must be silenced before he sings again." Then the supernatural struck again. Pilgrims at Lourdes, Fatima, and Guadalupe reported visions of a great storm waves crashing against a mighty ship, the bark of Peter, but never sinking. Many testified to hearing one phrase, "The shepherd is in danger." Pope Leo XIV called Tagle immediately. "My brother, your life is not your own now. Heaven is speaking through you. Protect yourself, but do not fear, for the purification has begun." Tagle, shaken but resolute, whispered back, "Holy Father, I felt at the moment I sang. Something moved, something far beyond me." The days that followed were chaos. 3 cardinals known to oppose the Pope abruptly resigned, no explanation, no public statement. Rumors claimed they had been confronted with secret evidence, files linking them to decades of financial corruption and even collusion with anti-Christian networks. Vatican police increased security, fearing an internal strike, and then the sky itself gave a sign. On the Feast of the Sacred Heart, a crimson aurora danced above Rome, photographed by thousands, visible even at midday. Many said it resembled a cross of light piercing through clouds shaped like chains breaking apart. Skeptics called it coincidence. But the faithful wept, kneeling in the streets, chanting, "Christus vincet, Christus regnat, Christus imperit." World's media swarmed, desperate for answers. What had begun as an awkward TV request for a cardinal to sing had spiraled into what some were calling the spark of a spiritual war. Inside the Apostolic Palace, Pope Leo XIV closed his eyes and whispered, "Lord, I see it now. You are shaking the church not to destroy her, but to cleanse her, to prepare her for what is coming." And from the shadows of Rome, a voice replied, not from heaven but from an enemy unseen, "This is only the beginning. We will strike again." The bride of Christ was now standing at the edge of purification, and every soul on earth was about to feel the tremor. Asterisk. The sealed document was thicker than any dossier Pope Leo XIV had seen since his election. Its cover bore a single Latin phrase, inked by hand in deep crimson, "Ad purificationem sponsa," for the purification of the bride. The Pope's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were names, high-ranking prelates. Some he had personally embraced during his installation mass. Notes of secret meetings, coded transfers of millions of euros, in chilling directives written not in formal ecclesial Latin, but in the cold language of power. Destroy faith in the Eucharist, divide the sheep, remove the shepherd. The Pope's breath quickened. This was no mere gossip. These were signatures, dates, photographs, evidence of a faction that had been hiding in plain sight, entrenched in power for decades, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, they had chosen Cardinal Tagle's voice as their battlefield. But one page stopped Leo's heart, a death threat. Against him, it read simply, "Remove Leo XIV before the Jubilee closes, blame natural causes." The room went silent except for the distant tolling of a single bell outside St. Peter's Basilica. The Pope fell to his knees, clutching the crucifix around his neck. "Lord, not my will, but yours be done. If this is the hour of trial, strengthen your bride. Purify her," and then an earthquake. It struck Rome without warning. Chandeliers swayed, walls cracked, and the great dome of St. Peter's groaned. People screamed in the streets. Yet strangely miraculously, The only place untouched was the papal chapel where Leo prayed. Not a single candle fell, not a single statue moved. Witnesses would later swear they heard a voice above the quake. "I am with you until the end of the age." Hours later, Vatican security intercepted another coded message. The first strike failed switch to Plan B. But what was Plan B? Who was behind it? Why did it reference a date only days away? The feast of Saints Peter and Paul. Meanwhile, Cardinal Tagle, still recovering from the tidal wave his televised singing had unleashed, received an anonymous phone call. A low voice warned him, "Do not appear at the feast mass. Your life is in danger." He hesitated, but then whispered, "My life is already his." The feast day came. Tens of thousands gathered in St. Peter's Square. Pope Leo XIV emerged from the apostolic palace, dressed in rich traditional vestments, his face pale, yet resolute. He carried a relic of St. Peter's chain, symbol of the first pope's captivity for Christ. As he raised it to bless the crowd, a shot rang out. Chaos screams. Pilgrims dropped to the ground. Security swarmed, but there was no blood, no wound. The Pope stood, untouched, eyes wide, but unshaken. A young man had been apprehended, weapon jammed, safety engaged. He had pulled the trigger, but it had not fired. The gun itself was later examined and found to be in perfect condition, yet in that moment, it froze. Many called it mechanical failure. But the faithful cried out, "A miracle!" The Pope raised his voice over the crowd. "Do not be afraid. Christ is King, and his bride will be purified." His words thundered across the square, broadcast live to millions. Some collapsed weeping, some cheered, others began to chant, "Sancta Ecclesia, Purifica nos, Purifica nos." But in the shadows of the colonnade, a cloaked figure watched silently, whispering into a hidden earpiece, "We failed. Phase 2 begins tonight." Back inside the Vatican, Leo received another letter, handwritten, unsigned, and chilling. "The bride will bleed before she is cleansed. And you, Holy Father, will choose who lives and who falls." The Pope sat in silence, tears streaming, gripping his rosary until his knuckles turned white. He knew what this meant. The great clash had begun, not of politics, not of ideology, but of spirits. Angels and demons now warred openly over the soul of the Church, and in the center stood a singing cardinal, a trembling pope, and a bride of Christ about to face her darkest hour. Asterisk that night. Phase 2 began. Inside the apostolic palace, a trusted aide, one who had served 3 popes, walked silently toward the papal library, carrying a sealed case. His credentials were flawless, his face familiar, his loyalty unquestioned. Until now, for inside that case was no document, no relic, but a device meant to cripple Vatican communications, to plunge the Church into silence at the hour of greatest need. Yet as he entered, something happened. The cross above the papal chair, an ancient crucifix said to have hung during the Council of Trent, suddenly fell from its place and struck the marble floor with a thunderous crack. The aide froze, staring at the crucifix. And at that exact moment, Pope Leo XIV entered, their eyes locked. "Why?" Pope whispered, voice shaking. The aide dropped to his knees, weeping uncontrollably. "Forgive me, I was told. They said you were leading the Church to ruin." Leo lifted the crucifix, kissed it, and spoke, "No, it is Christ who leads, and his bride will not fall." At that very moment, above St. Peter's Basilica, light appeared in the sky. Not lightning, not a meteor, but a column of golden fire that descended silently and hung above the dome like a crown. Thousands in the square screamed, cried, or knelt, believing it to be the glory of God. Photos and videos went viral instantly, but scientists had no explanation. And then, voice echoed, not from speakers, not from men, but deep inside the souls of all who stood there. "Behold, I make all things new." The factions plotting in darkness scattered like shadows at sunrise. Cardinals who had secretly conspired resigned that night. Hidden accounts were exposed, secret files leaked. The network that sought to divide the Church was shattered. Cardinal Tagle, upon hearing the news, fell to his knees and whispered, "Lord, you used a song to awaken the world." Pope Leo XIV stood at his window, tears streaming, raising the crucifix high. "The bride will be cleansed, the bride will be holy, and the gates of hell shall not prevail." And in that single night, as Rome trembled and heaven roared, the Church took its first step toward the great purification foretold by the saints. And it all began with a song.